Ooh, okay, it's burned, actually.
I'm happy to say, Oleg, that after maybe 2 years of hard work, I finally put on a good amount of muscle. I'm feeling full, energized, stronger, and it's making me feel better.
You know what? I've been working so hard and training and following all those diets and everything, but I cannot seem to have a decent progress for myself. And everybody else seems to be so successful and they are happy about their progress. But I just cannot get it. And then I need to say that I experience lots of negative emotions. I am not happy at all. What is that I have on the inside in my feelings?
What you're feeling right now is bitterness. And as you said, it's one big pot of negative, unmanaged emotions. And that can range from anger, hate, resentment, disappointment, jealousy, frustration. It's all of them put together. And then unmanaged creates poison to yourself. We've had these moments in our lives where we worked really hard for something and we didn't get it, where we've put in a lot of sweat and effort into our goals, into our passions, and have seen nothing, or maybe have seen failure. But responding to that with negativity, with this collection of negative emotions, causes bitterness. And the problem with bitterness and having a bitter mindset, attitude, perspective is a form of self-destruction, because in a sense you realize you're not living the life you desire, or you don't have what you've been dreaming for. And having that out of grasp, but not getting it, it stings. And what happens is when you keep those together, it burns fuel that you could be using for other things. Like in a sense, when you see this often with rumination, with continuous gossip and negative chatting, is that it never makes you feel better. You might feel better afterwards, but in the long run, the only thing you've done is pour rotten soup into your bowl that you should have refreshing, fulfilling, satisfying, but it isn't. And the step to bettering that is to recognize where it comes from. You could be angry at your manager and you hate your job and you're jealous of these rich YouTubers that seem to be living an easy life, and you could be disappointed in your current fitness goals. All of these are separate points, but when you take them all together, it can make you feel like crap. You feel down all the time, you feel just disappointed. But the thing is, because of these points that are scattered everywhere, it feels like you're being attacked in all directions. So the step is figure out where it comes from. Because the problem with maintaining a bitter attitude is eventually no one likes to be around you. Everyone thinks, there's the energy vampire. There's the person who's down all the time. Not fun to be around, unfortunately.
In my opinion, what you need to do is recognize first that you have bitterness. What I was trying to go through when I was kind of describing how I feel is just to put my hand on the definition of bitterness, right? Or to define what I have in terms of my emotions with just one word, if it is at all possible. It was possible. So it is bitterness. That's what I'm having right now. Once I see all the successful people around me achieving success and making good progress in life, broadly speaking. But what happens to me is that I'm not there. So maybe I'm not there yet, and I can entirely possibly get there as long as I do my work. So this is something to be done and developed later on. But the first thing, the first line of defense is to recognize. I agree, Wahab, with you that you have this bitterness in yourself. So that means that we have the problem with which we can work. We can solve this problem. Of course, at the first place, it's best not to have this problem at all. But not always life is ideal, and you can predict that, okay, I am going to have this problem, and then I will somehow obviate it, and then I will not have it. So we wish it were the truth, but it's not going to be the case oftentimes, to say the least, in our lives. So we need to deal with the problem of bitterness. Because we are life hackers, we can provide some viable solutions free of charge, and they can be available to, as we hope, a lot of people. Even sometimes hope is wrong, we can still say that we hope, and what is more, we are confident. Let's say we are confident we can provide viable solutions to a lot of people free of charge. So anyway, the first step is to recognize that you have the bitterness inside of yourself. The second step is to ask yourself, okay, well, how can I deal with that? Thankfully, solutions to bitterness are free. You don't have to buy some sort of tool from the shop, for example, apply it to yourself and remove bitterness from your mind, let's say. Right, so solutions can be simpler. If I feel bitter, what I can do to myself first is that I will detach my observer, so to speak, from my body, and I will put the observer outside of myself, so that this kind of like mythical observer could look at me from the side and then tell me what it looks like to be me when I'm bitter. And once I go through this mental exercise, I can understand that, okay, well, bitter version of me is not a fun version of me to be around, for example. I feel or I appear to be a loser. I appear to be negative. I appear to be a person with whom other people don't want to interact. What is more, if I have this negative emotion of bitterness inside of myself, then it means I will not be able to perform productive labor, for example. So, all in all, it is just going to be one more thing that will retard your progress overall in life, and specifically in some things that you are going to achieve. So, why to have bitterness at the first place? So, what I did next is that I decided to experiment a little bit. And the first experiment was that, okay, I'm just going to be bitter, let's say, for a day, or maybe even for a week. Although to be bitter for a week is not a good idea, as I figured out earlier in my life. So I decided to say, okay, well, what if I deliberately focus on being bitter for a day, right? And how do I feel? So my results were, of course, very telling. They were very tellingly negative. So I didn't feel good at all. So my mood was bad, simply speaking. I did not want to, let's say, enjoy things which I was supposed to enjoy. I didn't want to participate in any social interactions with my friends. I didn't want to build any relationships with people around me. And also my results at the gym, for example, were not good. So because my mind was concentrated on being bitter rather than on being productive and trying to make, let's say, some sort of fruitful training session, right? And my results at work were not good at all. So I didn't feel like I was able to do work, even do well. I felt like I was not able to do well the work, even if this was a simple task, for example, which I had proficiency at. So lots of downsides to being bitter, even if it is just for one day. So that was my first experiment, just to let myself be bitter and see what happens. Well, guess what? Nothing good happened. I would say all the areas of my life experienced some sort of negativity, and they, if anything, experienced the decrease in the growth. let's put it that way. So I was on the decline along many fronts of my life when I was bitter, even though for just one day.
It's a weight that pulls you down from being able to achieve so much more. And think of it just like a car, and you have limited gas to take you from A to B. If this car goes into unnecessary places and like just wanders around the wrong areas, you end up losing gas and you can't go to where you need to go. Similar to your energy, if you spend all the time with this, let's call it the negative soup, if you spend so much time with it, then when it comes time, like just like you said, to perform where it's needed, where you need focus, you need clarity, you can't do any of it. You're just tired. Even when you rest from the negativity, it doesn't even feel restful. And I know some people are going to think, well, what about situations outside of your control? Yes, these do happen. Like, unfortunately, illnesses can happen. Friends, or God forbid, anyone you love gets into a car crash. These things happen. And what you need to do is understand this. Be thankful for what you have. Now, this isn't saying, oh, well, I'm doing way better. Life has unfortunate circumstances. And while these events do need to be dealt with, they can't be a chain forever. Because if it is, then you'll be nothing but dragged down, miserable, in this case of bitterment forever. And that's no way to live. So, just like you said, is recognition. And even if it takes someone from the outside to do it, listen, notice. Like, I've had a case, same thing. One of my friends dragged me aside one time. He was like, hey man, what's your deal? Like, you're being down all the time. This isn't you. And then I'm just like, oh man, I hate this job I'm doing. I hate the route I'm taking for traffic. I'm not able to go to the gym some days. I hate not being able to eat healthy. The number one thing he told me, he's like, what can you do about it? I'm like, well, I can fix a few things. I was like, okay, fixed it. What else? The other things that are just, I guess you could say, crappy points. You're just gonna whine about it and be like, oh, well, this and that and this. It's like, no, you're gonna lose energy. So see how you're spending your energy. If it's cases where, again, God forbid, it's out of your control, know that it's out of your control. I think it's Marcus Aurelius who said something like this, great philosopher. If you're not too familiar with his work, look him up, it's fantastic. Or if it's anything or any circumstance that's out of your control, the number one thing he said is, why worry about it? Do what you can. Spend the time with your loved ones. Spend the time with your friends. Spend positive time with yourself even. Because at the end of the day, that's the best you can do.
My next experiment was to remove bitterness from my life, even though for a day. It's easy to say, oh, remove bitterness from your life and kind of don't be bitter. But how do you actually do that? That was my question. I split my personal kinds of bitterness into two kinds. The first one was caused by things in general, which are kind of non-tangible and non-personal things. Let's put it that way, right? For example, the training, right? So I was not able to get my training goal achieved on a particular day. So what can I do about this? I decided to look at this, as cheesy as it sounds, from the bright side perspective, right? So I was still able to train. and I was able to achieve, if not the goal for this particular training session, I was able to make it to the training session, which counts already. And in itself, it is a big achievement if you think about it, because many a time we can just skip a training session on Monday, then we can skip it on Tuesday, and so on and so on. And then by Friday evening, you can see that the entire week of training was skipped. So even though you train, let's say, for half an hour or 15 minutes, Monday to Friday, then you already achieve your grand goal of just making the progress, right? Of just doing the training that you have to do. So there is nothing to be bitter about at the end if you think about it. You made progress. So let's say you achieved, for example, 60 points out of 100, right? And then you wanted to score perhaps 95 points out of 100. But if you think about it, what could also have happened is that you could have scored maybe 10 points out of 100 or maybe 0, but you scored 60. And then that definitely beats the smaller or close to 0 amount of points into like powder, right? So 60 is much better than 10. Not as good as 95, of course, but a lot of things are realized or discovered in comparison. So number 2, it was the personal bitterness. So what can I do here, right? Let's say I was bitter about somebody's success, right? So, and what can I do here? Oftentimes it could be the success of my friends. So for me, there were 2 pathways. I will either be silent about that and continue being simmered in the bitterness soup, as Wahab says, or I can do something about that. And the solution, in my case, was again free and simple. You just need to push through this obstacle. And the obstacle was to launch the communication with this person, right? So maybe this person is successful at making good presentations, for example, right? And then I cannot do that, and then I'm bitter about my presentations being bad, right? So what can I do? I can keep being bitter and jealous and angry and resentful with this person, or I can just talk to them and say, hey, how do you make your slides in PowerPoint so awesome? So can you share some advice? And so on and so on. And then all of a sudden you turn a potential foe into a friend. So how is it done? Via communication in this case. Actually, you can apply the communication principles to your, let's say, non-personal things, right? In which you are trying to progress. Well, how can I get more money? How can I achieve better gains at the gym and so on? Talk to somebody else who knows. Don't be just jealous and bitter and resentful about those people. Communicate with them if it is possible. Oftentimes it is possible. Even though they are some sort of high-achieving personality or high-achieving person that is famous and out of your reach, let's be honest, you can talk to the literature, you can talk to the friends who are as proficient as those famous people but not famous and are in your reach, and so on. So communication and doing research helps a lot in this case to eliminate the feeling of bitterness. And all of a sudden you have this sense of making something good, of doing something productive instead of just simmering yourself in the negative emotion of bitterness.
Just as you've allowed these negative emotions into your mind, into your soul, you can allow them out, and you can allow better emotions to take place, to take over them. But it needs action. It needs physical movement. It doesn't, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't, what's a good word for this? I guess you could say power up by just sitting there and doing nothing. It gains power through movement, through effort. It can be effort as calling a friend, calling a family member, spending time in nature, refreshing. So, I know you can do it.